alcohol beverage services. So I see some faces out there that I have seen before. Hello, hello. And I see some new names out there. So let's see, thank you all for joining. And we're really excited that we're going to have a virtual new Riff whiskey launch tonight. We're actually the very first retailer in Maryland to carry the brand, and excited that as of the first week of December, we have their products in our ABS retail stores. So I see some of you all are still joining, getting settled, pouring yourselves a little new Riff. So let's see, just so you all know, I am going to mute your lines tonight since we've got a little bit of a group coming on here. So you'll be muted. So we're going to use the chat box for any questions. And then also, just to keep up with what we are doing, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at ABS Montgomery County. Follow us on Twitter at ABS MoCo to sort of keep up with the latest news. Well, let's see. I'm just going to make sure everybody's muted real quick. And then let's see. So we are very excited for our session tonight with New Riff, and we have got two individuals that have graciously agreed to spend some time with us tonight. So Molly Lewis is their sales director for New Riff. Hi, Molly.
Everybody. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And then we also have Jay Erisman, New Riff's co-founder, and he's going to lead our session. Hey, Jay.
Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for having us, Melissa.
Absolutely. And so I just want to thank you both so much for all of us, for your partnership. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jay and Molly.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for showing up. And we're really excited about our brand coming into the state of Maryland. As Melissa indicated, we are dipping our toe in the water with Montgomery County. So all of the stores in the county will have access to the full line of products that we talk about tonight, but not the rest of the state, unfortunately. So wanted to make that clear. We get a lot of questions about that sometimes when we enter a market only partially, like we are with the state of Maryland. But we are thrilled to be able to bring an allocation to your state. We're looking forward to spending time with you all, and I'm happy to field some questions. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jay Erisman. As Melissa indicated, he's our co-founder. Jay wears lots of hats at the distillery. He's very humble. He's also the brain behind our mash bills. So he has a palate really second to none, and I think you'll really enjoy his presentation.
Hello. Well, why don't we begin with a little video tour that we put together. We happily started on this thing just before COVID hit, and we finished it up, the filming and everything right afterwards. And we can do a little bit of a screen share to do that. Let's see here. Come right to this and share that. And we should be able to.
Hello, welcome to New Riff Distilling. My name's Jay. We've been here in Newport, Kentucky since 2014, making bourbon and rye whiskey. Let's go see how it's made. We're an urban distillery here in Greater Cincinnati. We make bourbon and rye whiskey with 6 fermenters feeding 2 copper stills. This 24-inch diameter copper beer still is a classic piece of Kentucky bourbon making equipment. On the back of our bottle, it says, "A new riff on an old tradition." That's the meaning of our name. We learned the old tradition, which is Kentucky sour mash whiskey making, but we want to do a new riff on it every time. We want to learn the tradition, but play it our way. And that's what we aim to do with every recipe we make. All New Riff whiskeys are bottled in bond. We recognize that to be the world's highest standard for aged brown spirits in the world. How could we not bottle everything we make at the world's highest standard? And so we do. All New Riff whiskeys are bottled without chill filtration. Chill filtration is a cosmetic filtration. We don't do that here because we don't want to diminish or attenuate any of all the good things we love about whiskey. Our bourbon is made with 65% corn, and that comes from a single-family farmer right up the road in Indiana. It is non-GMO corn. We think he's the best corn farmer in the bourbon business. Our rye whiskey is made with 95% rye, 5% malted rye. And that 95% rye comes from Brooks Grain. We think they are the best supplier of rye to the bourbon industry. The first thing we did when we built new Riff Distilling was we went looking for a more unique water supply than the city of Newport. We discovered an aquifer 100 feet below us, gives us 500 gallons a minute of very mineral rich, very hard, 58-degree water. It allows us to run every day of the year. It provides a tremendous green energy savings to our distillery, and it also provides the basis of our big, broad flavor thanks to this big tasting water that we have. It's unique to us and very special water, we think. Thanks for joining us today at New Riff Distilling. We hope to see you soon in the future.
So, wasn't that fun? All right. Well, let's begin with picking up where the video left off, perhaps, and have a tasting of New Riff bottled in bond without chill filtration bourbon. This is our flagship whiskey, our flagship bourbon. And as we were mentioning in the video, here it says in the bottle, bottled in bond. Everything we make at New Riff is bottled in bond. We don't ever come out with something that's 90 proof small batch or 80 proof 18-month-old easy drinker or anything like that. Everything is bottled in bond, with the exception of the single barrels that we will discuss later. These are not bottled in bond because they are barrel proof. But everything else is bottled in bond, and furthermore, everything meets or exceeds the standards of bottled in bond with the exception of that proof. So we don't sell anything below the age of 4 years old. We don't bottle any whiskey below 100 proof. And so if we could begin tasting this, I'm going to pour myself out a small measure. This is our bottled in bond bourbon. It says on the back, by the way, the grain bill. If you're ever wondering the grain bill on a bottle of New Riff, turn it over and you'll see it. It's on the back. We love to talk about our grain bill. Unlike some distilleries that keep it a secret or something like that, we enjoy talking about it with consumers. We think people are far more excited to learn about it than to keep it some sort of trade secret. It's 30% rye. And so it is and 65% corn. It is a genuinely high rye bourbon. There's no legal definition of what is high rye. However, I always considered that anything over 20% probably deserved to be called high rye. And certainly at 30%, we are at double the legal, double the industry average, which is about 15% or 12% rye. Somewhere in there, 10, 12, 15, we're double that. So this is genuinely high rye stuff. And furthermore, as we state in the bottle, and it mentioned in our video, it is bottled without chill filtration. It says right there, chill filtration. We'll get into a little bit more as we go down the line here with chill filtration, but suffice to say, it is a quality precept at New Riff that was always in the cards. We always knew we would at the least make a whiskey without chill filtration. So that impacts how we drink the whiskey, or at least how I like to tell people to suggest people drink the whiskey. You can drink the whiskey, and of course your consumers, any way you want. It's your whiskey. Drink it with Coca-Cola if you want. But what I say is drink it any way you want, just buy it from me. All right. And the way I like to drink it is with a splash of water. If you hold your glass up like this, I hope you can see it on the interweb, but if not, just try it at home and trinkle a little bit of water in there, and you see these oils. See these oils swimming around in the glass. Those are oils that would have been filtered out if we had done a chill filtration upon this whiskey. And we leave all those oils and those natural esters and flavors and fatty acids and all of these all the components of the whiskey that are naturally in the barrel. We leave it in there, into the bottle, into your glass, and really let the whiskey show the best it can. And what I like about it is it allows additional flavors with adding a splash of water like that, additional flavors to come out and blossom. It changes the whiskey a little bit. It's very nice to drink straight up, but if you hit it with a little water, you will sort of discern the true nature of an unfiltered whiskey like New Riff. So being that it's high rye, there is a goodly amount of spice that comes with this whiskey, as you'll taste in a couple of minutes with our rye whiskey. It's a spicy whiskey. There is, by spice, we mean things like a signature flavor would be clove. There's often cinnamon, sometimes some black pepper, sometimes mace or nutmeg. Sometimes there's a sort of a minty element, and not like a peppermint candy, but more like wintergreen. You know, this sort of herbaceous minty quality can come in as well. We'll see that much more dramatically in the rye when we taste that in a few minutes. Well, I don't know how yours is tasting. Mine's pretty good after a day's work. And now my third Zoom of the day. Boy, I'm zooming all over the place now with this virtual technology. That is a tasty dram. Very spicy stuff. Fantastic, by the way, in a cocktail. We really enjoy the high rye, spicy, robust quality in a cocktail, a Manhattan or an old fashioned or those kind of cocktails. But we also enjoy, personally, I like a good strong whiskey in a cocktail like 100 proof here. But the fact that it's unfiltered also really helps the whiskey sort of, it's like pushes all the way through the flavor of the cocktail, from the aroma of the cocktail all the way to the finish of it. And you don't have it's sort of in the middle that the whiskey sort of peters out. It's a cocktail with sustain and length and good flavor from the first sip to the last and all the way across your palate. So do try, if you have some of these and you maybe have some bitters at home, try making an old fashioned or a mint julep. Actually, it's not the season for mint juleps here in Kentucky. The season for mint juleps apparently is the first Saturday in May, and then we forget about them the rest of the year. You Louisvillians will remember that, of course, is the Kentucky Derby. I like mint juleps year round. I especially do like them in the summer. But I've got a mint plant downstairs, and a mint julep in January to me is still very delicious. And I love our whiskey in a mint julep because, again, there's that minty quality that sometimes plays off the mint garnish that goes into a mint julep. Melissa, what do you think of this stuff?
You caught me muted talking to myself. No, I think it's absolutely delicious. I wish I'd been able to visit when I was actually out in Kentucky, but yeah, it is quite delicious. Although I'm a rye fan, so I'm waiting patiently.
We're gonna take care of you in just a minute. And furthermore, may I add, Melissa, most of the time when people drink New Riff, they just start muttering to themselves. It's a common reaction. So don't feel embarrassed that you were moved to such words. That goes on all the time. So that is our bottled and bond bourbon. Like I said, the flagship. When we started out at New Riff, we didn't have a plan necessarily to bottle things only as bottled and bond. It was a mission or a way to bring the whiskey to market that evolved as we started asking ourselves, well, just how do we bring this stuff to market? What's the proof? We know it's going to be unfiltered, so it's not going to be sort of a weakened whiskey at 90 proof or 80 proof or anything like that. But we realized that bottled and bond, as we kicked that idea around, it's more than just a category or more than just a market segment or something that's attractive to hipster bartenders and folks like that. As it says on the back of the bottle, bottled and bond is no less than the world's highest quality standard for a brown spirit. We mentioned this in the video, but it deserves some explanation. Since 1897, when the Bottled and Bond Act became a reality, and by the way, it was enacted and pushed across the legislative desks thanks to the efforts of Kentucky distillers. It was the Kentucky bourbon makers that pushed for the introduction of bottled and bond. All these years later, it is still the world's highest standard for quality in a brown spirit. It's higher than the quality standards required for Scotch, where it can be as low as 80 proof, and also they're allowed to add caramel color. It's higher than the standards in cognac, where you not only can be weaker and add 80 proof, but you're allowed to add oak flavoring, and you're allowed to add sugar to cognac. Did you know that? They're allowed to add a tiny sugar concentration to cognac to make it smoother. And bottled and bond forbids all of that stuff. Bottled and bond has got to be only the pure article from the distiller. And so we said to ourselves, if we really mean it, heart on our sleeve, here is we put our distillery number on our sleeve. If we really mean that, how can we not bottle everything we do forever and ever as Bottled and Bond. And so when we come out with, for example, some special editions, now you guys don't see those yet. We're just getting started here in Montgomery County, Maryland. But someday you'll get a few slots or a few shipments of some of our special whiskeys that we come out with. Those are also Bottled and Bond. We don't do anything else than Bottled and Bond whiskey, really. And I don't know of another distiller that can make that claim. So Melissa mentioned rye. Let's get into our rye whiskey. Yay, here is our rye, spoken like a true Marylander. May I ask, Maryland, one of the great states in our nation's history for rye. The famous rye whiskey of Maryland is all but extinct now. They're bringing it back slowly, but it was a sub-style. So this is our own style locally, if you will, of rye whiskey. The grain bill on here, as it says on the back, is 95% rye, 5% malted rye. So we call that 100% rye. And this is our riff on a famous rye made here in Greater Cincinnati. So it deserves mentioning, where are we in Kentucky? We are a Kentucky bourbon distillery. We're in Newport, Kentucky. And we are located at the very, very northern tip of Kentucky. You cannot get any further north than our distillery unless someone put a distillery on the Ohio River, okay? We are at the very far north, and that means Greater Cincinnati. So here in Greater Cincinnati is a great distillery in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. It's the former Seagram's plant, and we engaged the former master distiller at that plant to help us build this building behind us, to help us design New Riff, and moreover to teach us how to make really good whiskey. And his name was Larry Ebersol. He is responsible for inventing the famous 95% rye recipe. And he taught us the black magic of how to make this very difficult recipe. And so we put our own riff on it. Again, we are a new riff on an old tradition. And we took Larry's expertise and turned it into our own grain bill, which was 95% rye, 5% malted rye. So this is 100% rye, as we say, and very spicy and also a little bit extra sophisticated, thanks to that malted rye addition. And if the bourbon tasted a bit spicy to you, this stuff should make sort of no mistake going from 35% rye to 95% rye. This is a clinic in what spicy rye whiskey ought to taste like, what rye does in a distillate, what the rye grain tastes like when you distill it. So here, all the rye is uncovered and just nakedly available. It's much spicier than the bourbon. I get in my bottling, I don't know exactly which edition of our Bottled and Bond you have. The flavor can vary a little bit from batch to batch. But I get the clove that I mentioned. I get cinnamon. Cinnamon like red hot candies mixed with cinnamon stick. And there's also an herbal quality, sort of a little bit of grassiness. Sometimes rye, being essentially a grass, has got a little bit of a bready and a grassy aroma. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's there now. So if I add a little bit of water, as I am wont to do, I get additional flavors. Now more of the cinnamon, but it's more of the cinnamon stick. Sure. We will get, iPad Mike, get to the barrel proof in a minute when we taste our single barrels. Tasty. Melissa, does it meet with approval?
So I am trying not to drink on the job this evening, but it always delivers. Always,
Very
always.
Good. Very good. Thank you. So that is our Bottled and Bond rye. As we said, they are good in cocktails. The bourbon's great in a cocktail, but if you have not made a Manhattan and an old fashioned with our rye, particularly an old fashioned, I like it there because the the lack of the vermouth really lets the mintiness and things like that shine through. Please do try this in a rye whiskey cocktail of your choice. It's really a revelation to cocktail lovers who have grown up maybe drinking famous bourbon cocktails. They don't necessarily know that rye is also completely to be used in all those old cocktails, and it's really good that way. I think Molly and I are very curious as to what happens in Maryland with our rye, because Maryland is historically rye territory, more so than Kentucky. In Kentucky, it is often bourbon, bourbon, bourbon. And even after all these years, when people are drinking more and more rye, here in Kentucky, there's absolutely a subset of passionate whiskey lovers who love whiskey, and they just say, you know, I never got into rye. It's too spicy for me. It's too whatever. And slowly they're coming around, but there's certainly a set of the consuming public that is not a huge rye fan. I'm really curious what happens in Maryland and the East Coast as we go and try selling our rye there. And I wonder if the historical predilection and the backstory of rye in places like Baltimore, Maryland, and so on do not come through in sales of our rye too. So I'm really looking forward to finding that out. So moving on to our single barrel products, we have two of them here on display tonight. So we make bourbon and rye, and both of those get expressed into bottled and bond and single barrels. And here is our single barrel bourbon. The little secret is our biggest selling product is the single barrel bourbon. People see those words single barrel, single barrel, single barrel, single barrel, and they have no problem ponying up the extra money to come up with a single barrel. This is our biggest selling product, the single barrel bourbon. It is barrel proof without chill filtration, and our barreling proof, what we go into the barrel at, we put the whiskey into the barrel at 110 proof. That's quite a low proof because the industry maximum allowed is 125. Now, if you think about it, if we make this much whiskey at 135 proof off the still, and we cut it to 125 to go into the barrel, now we need this many barrels. If we cut it to 110 proof to go in the barrel, now we need this many barrels. And so it costs us in cooperage, in barrels, when we bottle or barrel it at 110. However, we did that for several reasons. One is that we believed that there were some flavors that we could catch at 110 proof in the barrel that we would miss out on at 125. But the real reason we did it was our research, as we spun up New Riff and got going with it, started answering these questions of how do we produce it. Our research indicated that the whiskey would show better younger, at a younger age, at the lower barreling proof. And it highlights our need for a 4-year-old bourbon. Again, this stuff is 4 years old. Look, on the back of every bottle, there's not only a grain bill, but there's also an age statement, aged at least 4 years. We are so proud to put this age statement on here. Took us 4 years of waiting, 4 longest years of our lives, I assure you. We put an age statement on there, and our need for a 4-year-old is very different from most companies, most bourbon makers. For many of them, the 4-year-old is the bottom shelf. It's the cheapest they make. No one is pretending it's great whiskey. No one is trying to push it as wonderful whiskey. No one is expecting it to win, awards. They put it in, they mix it with Coke and things like that. Well, we needed our whiskey to win awards, and it did. When in 2019, the first 6 months we were selling our bourbon, we sent all of our portfolio, the 4 bourbons and the 3 whiskeys at the time, because we didn't have single barrel rye yet. We sent our entire portfolio to the San Francisco World Spirits Competition, the most prestigious spirits competition in the world. We had never competed there before, and we won. The entire portfolio won the double gold medal, their highest award. We ran the table. And so that was our goal with a 4-year-old bourbon. So we need to do anything we can to make this stuff the best it can be. So this is barrel proof. The reason we chose this to be barrel proof, to address iPad Mike's question, was, well, we did so much work at the Party Source. And I will sidetrack just a minute here to say our background at New Riff is, like many of you, liquor retailers, right? We come out of a background of running one of America's, maybe the biggest store in America, dare I say one of the best stores in America. It's called the Party Source. And I worked there from 2001, and Ken Lewis built that store in 1993. It opened in 1993. And so we are liquor retailers at heart. And we did a lot of work with single barrels and private barrels and barrel proof things from the Kentucky bourbon industry, as well as all over the world, from tequila all the way to Scotland and back to Kentucky. So as we spun up New Riff, we realized, how can we not do a single barrel? Single barrels meant so much to us in our career. And so we're going to do a lot with that at New Riff. And so we do a lot of that here at New Riff. We have a dynamic and powerful single barrel program. So here's our single barrel. I don't know what barrel you have in front of you. If you have a bottle, you can look at the proof. Mine is 104.5 proof. We vary between the lower end like this, and at the upper end, the proof can get to be something like 108, 109, 112 proof sometimes, right in there. It depends on where it was held in the warehouse. And this is our single barrel proof. So again, hit it with a little water. We'll get to all of your questions in a minute as we go by. Maybe save some of these for a Q&A at the end of everything. So yeah, Johnny Abadraba's barrel is 112.2. So it's a little bit all over the place with our barrels, depending on where they are aged in the warehouse. So I want to tell you why these barrels are, and this is going to sound kind of silly, but we think they are extra special, single barrels. And here's why. Let's taste this, and then I'll explain why our single barrels are extra special. Once again, high rye whiskey, a lot of spicy flavor, a little bit sweeter in this bottle, but also sort of sweet spicy than the bottled in bond. So about our single barrels and how they come to be. You see this distillery building behind me right here. We are not an insignificant distillery whatsoever. We make about 8,000 barrels a year, but neither are we a big, huge distillery. We're relatively small, and we're small enough that if you can see behind me, there are some tanks there in the picture. So we distill one fermenter at a time, and a fermenter yields about 12 to 14 barrels of whiskey. We distill a fermenter, and the spirit, the white dog from that fermenter goes in a tank, and then it gets cut to 110 proof and it goes in the barrel. That's the end of that batch. Then we distill another fermenter, and that goes in the tank, and that gets cut, and that goes in the barrel. Then we distill another fermenter, and that goes in the tank, and that goes in the barrel. So what it amounts to at New Riff is that each fermenter of whiskey, each 12 to 14 barrel lot, is barreled independently, more or less independently, more or less discreetly from any other batch. And that means that in our single barrels, we capture not only the difference from one barrel to another, but also from fermenter to fermenter. And that means that our single barrels have got, relatively speaking, a tremendously wide range of flavors, because it's very different than the way most distilleries operate. The way most distilleries run, and this is a super smart way to run, and I don't mean to criticize them at all, because it's a very consistent way to make whiskey. How most of them run is they distill a batch of whiskey, it goes in a tank. They distill another fermenter of whiskey, and that goes in the tank. They distill 5 more fermenters of whiskey, and those go in the tank. And by the way, every one of these fermenters is as big as your house, okay? Very, very large whiskey factories that we have here in Kentucky. They mix all of those fermenters up in the tank, and then they barrel it. And what it does is it ameliorates the difference from barrel to barrel, from batch to batch to batch. It takes those differences from one to the next batch and smooths them out. And that means that they get a very consistent product going into the barrel. For better or for worse, that's not the way New Riff operates, simply because we are so doggone small. Our tanks are not big enough to hold more than one fermenter worth of spirit. Does that make sense? So we capture, and we didn't even plan it this way, it just happened. We capture the flavor not only of the barrel to barrel, but the batch. And every fermenter can have a little bit different character. This one has a little bit of sweetness. The next one might be really dry. The next one might be super spicy. The next one might be more oaky. The next one might be extra spicy. The next one, maybe it needs a little more time in the barrel. we see all these differences from lot to lot to lot. And it means New Riff single barrels are, like I said before, it's kind of silly to say so, but when it comes to single barrels, our stuff, we think, is a little bit extra special because of that. It is highly variable, and you have a wide range of flavors to choose from barrel to barrel. So with that in mind, let's move on to probably Melissa's favorite whiskey of the night, our single barrel rye. Yes, we also bottle this as a single barrel. Same grain bill, by the way, on both of these single barrels. They are unchanged in grain bill from the other. So this is, again, 95% rye, 5% malted rye. And to have a taste of that, my barrel is 104.2 proof. Oh, it's got a very herbaceous mint, but also a little bit of like dill and maybe even tarragon. Add a little water. Now comes some mint and real outright spicy character. Right. How do you like the rye? That is a spicy little meatball, as we like to say in our tasting lab. So that's the core whiskey lineup. Coming down the pike in the future, we have various limited amounts of some specialty editions that I think we'll someday get to you guys in Maryland. Again, we're just getting started here, so we're not beginning with those, but down the line, we will have limited releases of various other specialty whiskeys that we make. We have the ability at New Riff to insert into our process any grain, any bag of grain. It can be a 50-pound bag or a 2,000-pound bag. And we exploit this process to allow us to make a wide range of different mash bills. For a small distillery like us, I think we've made something like 42 different mash bills over the years, and some of those for other clients. But we have a whole bunch of stuff in our warehouse that, trust me, is coming to fruition someday. So we're looking forward to that, and I'm sure you and your consumers are as well. Why don't we address a few whiskey questions, and then we will get into talking about our Kentucky Wild Gin that we also make. So people were asking about OKI. I think Molly addressed that. Are there older barrels in our bottles? Great question. No, there's not really. Anything in the bottle now is essentially 4 years old. There might be something in there that's 4 years and a month or two, but there's nothing in there that is 6 years old, for example. By the way, we are a 6-year-old company. We opened in the spring of 2014, and we began distilling in June of 14. So actually, we do have in our warehouse a tiny bit of 6-year-old whiskey. We saved back most of the barrels of batch number 1 because we thought that would be historically important, and it's not released or available or whatever. But the important point is that we are holding back about 30% annually of our output to become older. We're not sure at this point how much quote unquote older it will be. Will it be 7, 8, 9, 10? We're not sure. We're not really worried about that right now. Right now, we're just holding back what we think is a generous amount, 30% of our output, because we could sell it all now as 4-year-old whiskey. We could open more markets. We could go statewide in Maryland. We could go to Texas, We're not doing that yet. And we're holding back 30% of our output to become older. Because as good as this stuff is, and as well received as this has been by the bourbon buying public and the awards and the writers and everybody, we know that the real glory and the real reputation of being a great small distillery, it's going to come with older whiskey. Whether that's 6, 7, 8, 9 is not really the point. So yes, we are holding back a bunch of older stuff, but what's in the barrel, what's in these bottles is 4 years old. Do we age on site? Bob Clayton asks. Yes, we do. Everything is aged and produced, aged, and bottled here. What else?
Jay, why don't you
Yeah.
address the master distiller question, the last one in the feed? I think that's a good one.
Oh, who is our master distiller? Why would we want a master distiller? We don't want a master distiller. Most of the masters don't even distill. Are you kidding me? I am jesting here. We don't have a master distiller. And we like it that way. We look, when we came to New Riff and started running this place here, all of us put together, myself, and I've been a career hobby in spirits. I've been in the industry, in and out of different parts of the alcoholic beverage industry since 1997. And I've been studying whiskey and learning about it since I was teen years old. All of us put together, our head distiller, Brian Sprance, came to us from the Boston Beer Company. Brilliant, brilliant man. The best coworker I ever had in my life, practically. He's a brilliant guy. And all of us put together, we had distilled this much whiskey, this much anything in our lives. I wish I could tell you, yeah, back in my dorm room, I had a still. I ran a still. I never did that. None of us ever distilled illegally or did anything like that. So we had distilled nothing in our whole lives. Let me take an opportunity to wind this into a slightly wider discussion about New Riff. The two most serendipitous things about starting this whole distillery, and to the point of the master distiller, when probably in 2011, 2010, Ken Lewis and I were spinning up this idea. And he said, Jay, let's do it. Let's build this distillery idea. And we realized we need some help. We need someone to help guide us, to help design the distillery. We need a master distiller. And we found, living locally in Northern Kentucky, he's about 20 minutes away, a recently retired master distiller from the Seagram's Lawrenceburg, Indiana plant. He's literally the best in the business. He's so good that when the big multinational conglomerate distilleries south of us in Kentucky have a problem, or they need some design work done, they call in, his name is Larry Ebersol. Larry was our consultant master distiller. He is not, quote unquote, New Riff's master distiller. He doesn't work there. I haven't seen him in months. He comes around now and then. We're pretty sure he's proud of us. But he was our consultant. And what a blessing it was to find right there in our own backyard, the best sour mash whiskey maker in the country. And he was newly retired and he was looking for work. So he came and designed New Riff. He put together so much of this distillery. He taught us how to run it. And he is not New Riff's master distiller, but to those of us on the production floor who he taught so much to, he is like our sensei. He is like our master, if you will. Like we are our Kung Fu students and he was our master. So we don't have a master distiller, but he was the one who taught us how to make great whiskey. Who determines the flavor profiles? Well, we set up these grain bills early on, and it was a team effort to get to the grain bill. We always knew that we would be high rye. If I have any claim to helping in our mash bill, it was to say that guys, let's do high rye whiskey, high rye bourbon, and let's be committed to high rye, to rye as a grain from the beginning. But after that, we cobbled together these mash bills together. Me and Brian Sprance, we had input from Larry, and he has certainly gave us a lot of advice on what yeast to use. We use the same yeast from day one. It's a dried yeast that we are very happy with. It gives very good flavor. And that was thanks to Larry as well. Another thing that determines the amazing profile can be seen in the picture behind me. If you look here on this, there, you see that square of concrete on the ground. If you want to see it up close, you can pin my video or go into speaker mode. But that square of concrete right there is possibly the most boring part of New Riff because it's a square of concrete. And it has a square manhole on top of it. But underneath that manhole is the secret to this whole place almost. It's the top of our well. We mentioned this in the video. First thing we did when building New Riff was we went looking for a better water supply than the city of Newport could afford. And we found that in an aquifer 100 feet below us, an aquifer that is mostly fed by the limestone formations that are in the hills that ring New Riff, that are the hills to the south of us. So we have these hills around New Riff, and these hills are full of limestone, and that limestone water pours down into this aquifer. Folks, this is a fantastic distilling water. When you taste this water, it's got 4 times the dissolved minerality of the typical water in the, like the tap water in the area, in the Ohio Valley. It's full of flavor. It's a big, fat, rich, broad tasting water. And I know that's the beginning of our own big, fat, rich texture in this whiskey. So I don't even know what it would be like if we made whiskey without that water. I just know it would be terribly different if we didn't have this fantastic water source. So the beginning, Bob Clayton, of our thank you, amazing flavor profiles comes right out of the ground, and it goes into the whiskey.
So Jay, if I can ask a quick question, and it might be for you or for Molly. I know going back to what Robert said, what Bob said about limited releases, is there ever, do you all do any sort of barrel programs, anything fun and cool that we might be able to get our hands on? And tell me to hush if you have to.
Jay, if you don't mind, I'll speak to that initially.
Absolutely.
We, you know, one of the questions earlier was about distribution and about how soon we were going to the rest of the state. One of the reasons that we are so slow with our expansion is that when we do enter a market such as Montgomery County, we want to be able to supply you with special releases and single barrel picks, etc. So I will let you know that we do have a single barrel pick plant. We have an allocation for a couple of different barrels throughout the year next year, but our first one is being picked in January. And our turnaround time is relatively quick. We like to say about 6 weeks. So as that gets closer, I'm sure Melissa and the team will let folks know when that will be available. But I would start poking around and looking for it in March. Other than that, we do have a spring and fall release. We are trying to make sure that they get to outer markets as we expand. I also guaranteed that by the holiday season of next year that Maryland or Montgomery County will get an allocation of our winter whiskey, which we can talk about a little bit. It's fun. It's a chocolate oatmeal stout, if you will, bourbon. Jay might allude to that a little bit, or we can jump on a call maybe next holiday season and talk to you about that one. But yes, the answer to the specialty question is we do want you to have access to all of our specialty items. We don't want to just trickle in a few bottles, and that's why we are so slow to expand.
So you guys are awesome. Let me just start there. So I'm clapping over my head. That is fantastic. And we'll keep you guys posted. I know I see, like I said, some familiar faces. So we will definitely keep you all posted when we get some of these cool new releases for New Riff.
Right. Someday when we get past this terrible pandemic, we'd love to have a group of you come to our warehouse. And what we really like to do when we kick off a single barrel, a private barrel relationship like this, is to have the people in, to have a group of folks come in, see our distillery, see our warehouse, talk to the people, taste the well water, things like that. Really come in and drink the Kool-Aid. And we can't do very much of that right now. It's not wise. So we're probably sending samples here this terrible winter. But come, maybe next fall, or certainly 2022, we look forward to receiving maybe a select group of you on a barrel pick. We had, again, long experience with barrel picking and single barrels, private barrels, and programs like that at the Party Source when we were retailers. And at New Riff, we want to do that. We want to do justice to that kind of a program. And so we lay out the red carpet and really put our best foot forward to make that a dynamic and engaging program. And all we can say right now is trust us. When you get there, it'll be worth the wait, I hope. Bob asks, how did we do at San Francisco this year? We did fine. We won another double gold medal for our single barrel rye, I think it was, or maybe it was the bourbon. We won a couple of gold medals, including for our rye, Balboa rye, which is an heirloom rye whiskey that won a gold medal, I believe. and we won silver and bronze medals for both the gins. So once again, we put in our whole portfolio, including some new things, and everything medaled again, I believe. So about our gin. Here is our Kentucky Wild Gin. This is the gin that we make. We distill it on site. If you look in our picture right here, this still on that side is our copper doubler, and the one right here is our 500-gallon copper pot still. Again, come and visit and you can see them up close. And we distill, the pot still has made, we make whiskey on that still. That stuff will come out someday, but mostly what the pot still makes is our gin. So the gin, I am pleased to say I am the gin maker. This was my recipe that I came up with in the early days of New Riff. Summer of 2014, I put this together. And it is called Kentucky Wild Gin. You see here on the bottle. The first thing you ask yourself going to make a gin is, well, what style of gin? Do you make a London Dry? Do you make a modern New Western gin? Does it have lots of citrus in it? Do you make an Old Tom? Do you make a Genever? What style of gin do you make? And I wanted to make a gin from here, a gin from here, from Kentucky, from the Ohio Valley, from where we come from. And I was inspired in that by some gins around the world that use local botanicals in their production. And I looked around, northern Kentucky and the Ohio Valley, and realized we don't have things like fields of coriander. We don't have citrus trees, so I can't put locally harvested lemons and oranges and stuff like that in there. What are we going to do? And I looked out in the woods and I looked in the farmers markets, and I found some local, very ancient botanicals that are native to the Ohio Valley. One of them is a local juniper, and it is the seed of the eastern red cedar tree, which is in fact a species of juniper. It is a juniper berry. And we put that in the gin. It is a portion of the juniper in our gin, is a local wild foraged juniper. This is an old seasoning in the Ohio Valley. People have been cooking with it for centuries. And then I also found a berry. It's called the spice berry, the spice bush berry. And this plant is a spice bush. I went on a hike in the woods with my family the other day, and we walked past about 2 or 3 dozen spice bush. They're all over the place. It's a bush, it's about 8 feet high, and it puts off this little red berry that kind of tastes like allspice. If you know the flavor of allspice, sometimes this stuff is called American allspice. It's that reminiscent of allspice. And so we picked that as well. I have farmers and foragers in the woods picking this stuff by hand and putting it in a basket and bringing it to New Riff. They are wild foraged, wild picked. They are not commercially available. I can't order these from a spice house. I can't order these from any commercial purveyor. They've got to be wild harvested. And so hopefully by dint of this, what we capture in our Kentucky Wild Gin is the flavor of the Ohio Valley, the flavor of Kentucky, the native flavors that have been used here by settlers, by Native Americans for thousands of years. And that's getting into our gin. So to taste this stuff, and by the way, this is 94 proof. It is a good, strong, hearty gin. I can't abide a weak gin. I'm a gin nut. I was raised by a gin nut. My dad is a martini maker. And so I couldn't not help found a distillery and make a gin. But the result is Kentucky Wild Gin. It is, in my opinion, a very flexible gin. It makes a good martini, and it better make a good martini or my dad would probably disown me. So it makes a good martini. It also makes all the classic cocktails very nicely. It's a good, strong 94 proof gin, and is great in all those famous cocktails. And in addition to that allspice note that you get, it is otherwise a relatively classic London Dry gin. So it's not a weird gin flavor or something that people won't understand. It's a very flexible gin. Good gin and tonics, absolutely. And makes all the classic cocktails. It's a passion project and a fun thing to sell alongside, especially when it comes to cocktails, to sell alongside the bourbon. And then we also have And how could we not make this, being that we are a bourbon distillery and we have bourbon barrels piling up all over the place? How could we not put that gin into a bourbon barrel? So I think Molly has in front of her a bottle of the bourbon barrel gin. It's got a green label, and this is that's the same stuff off the still as our Kentucky Wild Gin, except that it spends about 7 months in New Riff bourbon and rye barrels. And it is, I have a glass here, a sample I will pour. And if you can see the color, it's not at all as dark as the whiskey, but a little bit of a shade to it. And what we have flavor wise is the flavors of those gins, of the rest of the gin, but they are made a little bit more gentle. They're mellower, and they are joined by a certain amount of vanilla, of oak, of tones that come from the barrel, and makes a very fun gin, something that is good on its own. It's really good in a few classic cocktails. For many people who aren't gin lovers, that's the first gin that gets them back into the category, is to have a barrel-aged gin. If I could lay on you for a moment, my favorite cocktail to make with that is a cocktail called the Martinez. And the Martinez is nothing more complicated than a Manhattan, but it's made with gin. You replace the whiskey in a Manhattan with gin, boom, you got a Martinez. So a Martinez is good when you make it with a plain gin. It's good when you make it with this. But when you make a Martinez, and so that would be gin, vermouth, bitters on the rocks, or you can serve it up, maybe a twist of orange for the garnish. Go and make a Martinez. But when you make it with New Riff bourbon barrel gin, now you get a really magical cocktail that returns to the drink some of the barrel flavors, the vanilla, the oak, that you pulled out when you swapped the gin in for the whiskey. And a Martinez with bourbon barrel gin becomes, what the heck am I drinking? Is it a gin cocktail or a Manhattan, or is it a whiskey thing? I don't know anymore. The lines between what is a gin cocktail and a whiskey cocktail begin to blur. If you drink too many of these, then everything starts to blur. So I don't recommend that. But please go do try a Martinez if you haven't had one. When you can get back into a good bar, go and ask for a Martinez from a good bartender. And please use Kentucky Wild Gin if you can. And you will find a new best friend maybe in the cocktail category. So about some of these questions here. Yes, cooperages, we use 2 of them, as Molly states here. The charring and toasting, all of our barrels are toasted. They are typically a char number 4, except that we do use a high percentage actually of barrels from Independent Stave that are extra air dried, that are made with air dried staves that, instead of being air dried for about 6 months, are air dried for up to 24 months. And those 24-month air dried barrels get only a number 1 char, actually. And we do that because we didn't want to burn away too much of that precious 24-month wood that we waited 24 months to make a barrel out of. We want to preserve as much of that as we can. And so they get a very gentle char. And those make exceptionally good bourbon, especially on the young side. They really do a number on young whiskey. So we pay great attention to the charring and the toasting of the barrels. But we didn't start out that way. The advice that Larry Ebersald, our consulting master distiller, gave us was, guys, just get a barrel. Just get a damn barrel. Don't get a fancy barrel. Just start off with a basic old bourbon barrel. Fill that up, let it go, and then you can begin to evaluate it. Then you can begin to see what it tastes like. And after 2 or 3 or 4 years, then you can start to make some changes. So in our early years, we just had a plain old bourbon barrel char number 4. And there's no magic number to the chars, by the way. If I were making a lighter bourbon, like a wheated bourbon all the time, maybe we would go with a char number 3. But considering that we were going with high rye bourbon and we wanted to make a big, fat, heavy, full-bodied, mucho gusto whiskey, we were not setting out here at New Riff to make mild whiskey, gentle whiskey. We wanted to make full-on whiskey, So we went with the higher char number, anticipating that that would maybe balance what we were doing with the yeast in the distillation, the flavors we got in fermentation, the grain bill. But we do use actually some #1 char barrels when they are 24-month air dried seasoning. And tasting them so far, they're really good.
Awesome. Anyone else have any questions to throw into the chat before we wrap up?
I will address Sean Redmond's question here about gin. Thanks for asking, Sean. Flowery gins and different gin botanical bills, if you will. So the legal requirement of gin is a little bit nebulous. It's required to have a predominating flavor of juniper. That's not particularly defined, is it? You know, there are gins out there that don't really have very much juniper at all. I don't mean to cast shade on Hendrick's, which you mentioned here. Hendrick's is, I love Hendrick's. It's a good, solid gin, but there are gins out there that don't have sometimes that kind of flavor, that have a much more flowery or effusive or herbal or basil or lemon verbena or some damn thing going in there. I just go back to first of all, my roots as a gin lover. Like I mentioned, I was raised by a gin lover. My dad has made martinis his whole life. He's a chemist, and his demonstration to me from a young lad of making a fine cocktail every night was the beginning of my whole background, really, in fine drink. I learned from the cradle that to respect and be responsible with good drink, and to treat it. It wasn't just a shot in a beer and stuff like that. It was take your time, make it right. So I wanted to make gin that would honor my own tradition and so on. But I also go back to my days as a retailer, and maybe some of you retailers get this as well. I would have craft distillers come and come into the store and to bring in their special bottle of gin, and oh, I've made this, and they say, I heard it so many times, we think this is a gin that vodka lovers might enjoy. And I would tell them, get the hell out of here, go home, make me a gin that gin lovers love. That's the kind of gin I want to sell. That's the kind of gin I want to drink. I don't want a vodka lovers gin. I want a gin lovers gin. And so I hope in making our gin that we have made a gin lovers gin. So there aren't any illegal requirements for gin other than it has to be predominantly flavored with juniper. Ours it's a good, healthy juniper forward gin. If someone out there makes a gin of other parameters, they're welcome to do that. But that's what we wanted to make, is a good, honest, traditional gin. However, a gin of the Ohio Valley, a gin from Kentucky, a Kentucky wild gin, a gin, by the way, that lives up to a new riff on an old tradition. So our gin is our riff on a gin, and hopefully it is, like we said, a gin truly of Kentucky. Who makes the final decision as to what barrels are going to be limited releases and which are going to be barrel proof? Bob, we have a set of dice that we throw on the table. No, I'm making that up. That's not the case at all. We have a very hardworking quality control panel, of whom I am one of the founding members. Brian Sprant and I work on this panel, and it includes several of our distillers, and also some of the rest of our team that helps write the tasting notes for our private barrel picks. And we taste, literally every barrel is tasted by somebody. We taste all the barrels of a given month, or a given batch or cluster, as we call it, a cluster of barrels that comes out of the warehouse. And one of us on the sensory panel tastes every one. And between us all working on this, we get a sense of where the quality lies. And honestly, the great majority of our barrels qualify as a single barrel. However, we can't release everything as a single barrel because we have to have enough barrels left over to make a bottled and bond batch. There's about 23 to 30 barrels that go into a batch of bottled and bond. We can't pull out all of the best or the most glamorous tasting barrels to become singles, or it robs too much quality from the bottled and bond. So it's a bit of a delicate dance between how many go single barrel and how many need to go into bonded, and how many get held back. What we hold back in our 30% retainer for future aging is not merely the handful of barrels every month, and it's not very many, that need to be aged longer, that just aren't ready. But we also want to hold back some of the sort of average barrel. And we also want to hold back some of the best that we have, because we want a slice of new Riff barrel quality that is everything we've got to become older. And so when this stuff becomes 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, however old it becomes, we want a little bit of everything in there from 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. So we make that choice together. I have a significant voice in that, and so does Brian Sprance. And so does our sales team, who says, you know, we would really like X number of single barrels or private barrels this month. Can we make that happen? And we do our best to fulfill that.
So I will definitely say thank you guys so much. This has been amazing, Jay, amazing, Molly. We are, and I hate that I have water in my hand, but we are sending you a virtual toast. Just really appreciate you sharing all of your whiskey wisdom.
Thank you.
Your gin wisdom with us. And then I will say to all of our attendees, whether this was your first virtual session of the year or your 20th.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you for joining us. And we hope to see you in the new year. Have a wonderful holiday season. So thank you all. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Molly.
Absolutely.
And thanks for thinking of us here in Montgomery County.
You bet.
Thanks for having us.
We'll see you in 2021.
Yes. And please come visit us in Kentucky when you're able.
You don't have to ask twice. Thank you, guys.
Very good.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.